Jamal Crawford has had quite the turbulent career. Being part of the 2000 NBA draft class, you guys know how I feel about that class. It was pretty awful from top to bottom. But out of everybody else in that class, Jamal Crawford has lasted the longest. In fact, as of right now, he's still playing. Well, barely. With the Phoenix Suns, besides that 50-point explosion that seemingly came out of nowhere, he hasn't been very good. But he's still hanging in there. It's always nice to see older players continue to grind it out. Now, I'm sure everyone knows who Jamal Crawford is. He was known to be the definition of instant offense off the bench, similar to a past player like Vinnie Johnson, a spark plug who can check into the game and instantly create plays for himself or for his teammates. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and this is the story of Jamal Crawford. 3-time 6th Man of the Year, the most number of times a single player ever won the award. This video is sponsored by Ridge Wallets. The Ridge Wallet is a minimal, front pocket wallet that's designed to let you ditch your bulky wallet. This wallet is slim, RFID blocking, and lifetime guaranteed. It comes in titanium, carbon fiber, aluminum, polycarbonate, and with over a dozen different styles and colors. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping by going to ridgewallet.com/Andy. Alright, so let's get started. Born in Seattle, Washington, Crawford made his name known in high school. With his flashy handles, a smooth jumper, and crafty ability to finish at the rim, he was a spectacle to watch. He would also be the inspiration for future NBA players like Isaiah Thomas and Nate Robinson, who were also from the Seattle area. During his NBA career, Crawford would often go back to Seattle and hold basketball camps there where a ton of young players would participate in scrimmages. He did a lot for his hometown and his community. Everyone there loves him. After graduating from high school, Crawford would attend college at Michigan. He would only stay there for one season, averaging over 16 points and 4 assists as a freshman. Unfortunately, he only played in 17 games because he got suspended after the NCAA investigated him and found out that Michigan paid Crawford under the table, as they discovered that he received extra benefits including money and other luxuries. Anyway, with the 8th pick of the 2000 NBA draft, Crawford would get drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers and then traded to Chicago. He had a rather complex pre-draft scouting report. Many scouts had a hard time evaluating and believed that he could possibly be the best player of the class, but he could also completely bust if he can't adapt to NBA game plans. Very rarely do we ever see combo guards figure it out. According to Draft Express, this was the summary of his scouting reports. A very talented, offensive-minded shooting guard, has solid size for the 2 at 6'4.5" without shoes, possesses a terrific 6'10" wingspan, adds great quickness and leaping ability as well, shows good lateral quickness defensively, not very strong and could stand to add some muscle to his frame, a very capable shooter with the ability to get to the rim, will tally some assists but looks for his shot first. A pretty accurate description, and it describes Crawford's game almost perfectly. Although defensively, he was always a below-average defender even though he was very quick. I know steals are not the best way to measure defense, but still, you'd expect somebody as fast as Crawford to average around 2 steals a game, but career-wise, he averages fewer than 1. Anyway, in his first couple years in the NBA, Crawford would play for a struggling Chicago Bulls team. This was the start of the Bulls' rebuild after Michael Jordan retired for the 2nd time. Scottie Pippen was gone too, so as expected, they were really bad now. There was a weird mix of players on the roster, young guys like Elton Brand, Ron Artest, Brad Miller, and Crawford himself, along with veterans Fred Hoiberg and a bunch of other guys I'd never heard of. Despite a slow start, Crawford steadily worked his way into the starting lineup. By his 4th season in Chicago, he became the team's full-time starting shooting guard. He even led his team in scoring with over 17 points a game, but he was one of the most inefficient scorers in the entire league. Actually, that season, he was the least efficient out of anybody who took over 15 shots a game. The Bulls went through a bunch of different roster changes as well as they continued to replace their young players with other young players, and it was a sad cycle that they couldn't break out of. Crawford was a bright spot, but he was also the model of inconsistency, almost like an older version of J.R. Smith. I mean, look at his numbers from game to game. He would regularly have like a 20-point game and then follow that up with a 5-point game. Or something like that. It's crazy. With that being said, near the end of his 4th season, in April of 2004, Crawford recorded a 50-point game. That's one of those things that made Crawford stand out above his peers. Yeah, he was crazy inefficient sometimes, he'd chuck up a ton of shots and miss a lot, but he's confident, he plays the same game on every team he goes to. His move, the shake and bake, became his signature move, and would excite the crowd every time he pulls it off. There are only 4 players in NBA history who've scored at least 50 points on 3 different teams: Wilt Chamberlain, Bernard King, Moses Malone, and LeBron James. There's only 1 player who scored at least 50 on 4 different teams. That's Jamal Crawford. Speaking of the Knicks, he would get traded there in the summer of 2004. Originally brought on because they had to fill their hole at shooting guard after Latrell Sprewell left a year earlier. Crawford joined another team struggling to make the playoffs, and it was not a good fit. At the time, the Knicks' president of basketball operations was Isaiah Thomas, who, he was not a good GM. He was not a good coach either. A backcourt of Stephon Marbury and Crawford was by far the worst defensive backcourts in the league. They would finish bottom 6 in defensive rating in every season Crawford was there. Frankly, the next 4 seasons in New York weren't that much different than his 4 years in Chicago. It was a combination of bad management, inexperienced young players, and overall, the roster was a terrible fit for everyone involved. Crawford did have some great individual moments though. On January 26, 2007, he would score 52 points, a game where he hit 16 shots in a row. The Knicks were facing Dwayne Wade, Shaq, and the Miami Heat, the defending champions. It was the best individual performance in the entire season. When it happened, teammate Stephon Marbury said, "That was the best performance I've ever seen inside the Garden, other than Michael Jordan." Dwayne Wade said, "Unbelievable performance. I have never seen anything like that before. The guy was hot." This was the second 50-point game of Crawford's career. In the following season, he averaged over 20 points a game, marking the only time of his career where he averaged over 20 points in a single season. At this point, Crawford was seen as a bright spot on an otherwise terrible Knicks team. But the reality was, he was not a player who could carry the team every night. While he would explode for 30 or 40 points occasionally, he would almost equally give up just as many points at the other end. Defense was a thorn on his side, and shooting-wise, he had a ton of off nights. In fact, according to him, in an interview in 2012, he said he's never done any shooting drills before, in practice. That sounds kinda ridiculous, but maybe he wasn't lying. I mean, if he did spend more time working on his shots in practice, maybe the inconsistency would have went away. At this point, 8 seasons into his NBA career, at 28 years old, Crawford has not made the playoffs a single time. After a short stint with the Warriors where he would record another 50-point game and miss the playoffs again, he figured that, it's time for a change of scenery. Despite being a prolific scorer, he had the reputation of being a loser, and his playstyle was not leading them to wins. Perhaps his skills were best suited for coming off the bench, where he gets to outplay other bench players. Hawks GM Rick Sund was interested in Crawford and gave him an offer. He said that, "I went right for the jugular. I told him there was an opportunity here to have tremendous notoriety coming off the bench. I told him if we were going to take this to the next level, be a championship caliber team, we needed someone to really make an impact off the bench." As a result, in the summer of 2009, he would sign with the Atlanta Hawks to come off the bench, as he made an immediate impact on the team and eventually named the 6th man of the year, averaging 18 points a game off the bench. His 2 seasons in Atlanta would also include his first 2 appearances in the playoffs. They were always a middling playoff team who might give someone a hard time, but then lose in the second round. Fast forward a bit to the summer of 2011, and Crawford would sign with the Blazers in a rather disappointing season, which left Blazers fans feeling upset. He would then find his way to the LA Clippers, where he would win another 6th man of the year in 2014, then his 3rd one in 2016. His 3rd 6th man of the year, well, he probably didn't deserve it, but I mean, he still won it. There was a couple other players who I think deserved it more than he did. Nowadays, most of us recognize Crawford during his days with the Clippers, and what's impressive is that he was in his mid-30s. Yet he was still playing the exact same way for his whole career. That's a good thing and a bad thing. His game did not improve much since he entered the league, but he was still the same scorer as in his prime. Even his Clippers teammates praised him, saying that Jamal never ages. However, a couple of years later, and he did start showing signs of age, especially in Minnesota and Phoenix. With that being said, he might have not lived up to expectations, especially for a guy of his talent and skills, but he still had a great NBA career and played much longer than everyone thought. I know he's still in the league, but his time is running out. The curtain's gonna close on Crawford, one of the greatest bench players the NBA has ever seen. And that's all, folks. That sums up the story of Jamal Crawford's NBA career. He was never a star or a superstar, but he was indeed a great player with a very long career. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.